We finally entered September, and gold has a lot of reason to go up and down, but here to parse it for you is Mike McGlone of ETF Securities US. Mike, thanks for being back in the studio.
Good to be back.
So, Mike, we've talked about Syria nonstop for about 2 weeks now, but what else should we be looking at with the yellow metal? Are there other things to trade on?
Yes, obviously political unrest and unrest in Middle East is a key factor, but there's a lot more happening. A good example is last week. If that is the most important thing in the market, then gold should have been up the most of all the precious metals, but silver is actually up more. And even yesterday, silver was up 3% when we opened up. Gold was down, and the gold recovered as it looked like the strike was more imminent.
So why?
And so, well, it's because I think there's much more happening. First of all, September seasonally is the best month of the year historically for gold, 3% on average since 1990. And I think the market sees what's coming ahead, which markets always do. And one of the key things is the budget debate. The budget debate, and U.S. budget. There's only been 11 significant votes since the end of the 90s in the U.S. Congress to raise the budget ceiling. And that started beginning of the decade. The budget ceiling was around $6 trillion. And now it's $16.7 trillion. But if you look at that price, or in terms of like the gold price, those trillions of dollars of gold price, 16, maybe a 16 handle, there's been a relationship between the budget ceiling and gold, and the difference has been about $300. So example is the budget ceiling right now is almost $17 trillion, and the gold price is around $14 an ounce. So it's been about $300 below, and it's been following the budget ceiling higher, the price of gold.
Yeah, of course, we remember the last debt ceiling talks back in August of 2011 threw the equity markets into turmoil, and yet gold continued its bull run up. Of course, we saw the bull run kind of end this year, but let's turn to silver then. The other precious metals, how have they been trading throughout all of the Syria discussions?
Well, silver's been the best performer, and I think partly because it was the worst performer earlier in the year. So silver's really coming back. It got way overdone. There's been a massive amount of demand. ETF holdings are at all-time highs. U.S. Mint silver purchases have reached record amounts. And that's just a small part of the market. Silver is obviously, as we know, is much more industrial. And I think the market sees the industrial demand coming too. Obviously there's supply, but the demand is picking up exponentially. And silver is known sometimes as the devil's metal. It historically can be considered a leverage play on gold, and it's been rallying the most of all the precious metals, and it's really just recovering. It's catching up to where it really got slammed early in the year.
Seasonally, as you've mentioned before, September's a pretty good month for gold and the precious metals. What should we expect in September?
Well, it's just by observing the past, generally it's a very good month, and I think the market's off to a start that it's indicative of what generally happens in the month of September. It's rally, but we also have the unemployment number coming up. And unemployment in August, which was July unemployment, was a little bit weaker than expected, and it really set the tone for the month. That could happen again. We'll see how that prints on Friday.
All right, Mike McGlone, we'll talk more about this next week when we find out those numbers. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
For The Street, I'm Joe Dell.